Hello and welcome back to WD18, the Watford fan channel, and welcome back to another podcast. Thank you very much for joining us after back-to-back wins for Watford for the first time since January. It's a weird feeling actually, because I was just speaking to Sam before we started recording. If we'd recorded this podcast straight after the game, our emotions would have been high, a massive win for Watford, but with the results going against us this weekend, with Bournemouth winning against Leicester and Aston Villa winning against Crystal Palace, I think the positive vibes have somewhat dropped since the weekend. However, we're going to be taking a look at that Newcastle game. We're also going to be taking a look at the run-in as we approach the final 3 games of this Premier League season. As I said before, we're joined by Sam. How you feeling?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you, Jacob. Do you know, it's just so weird how in the space of 24 hours, football can just completely change your mood. Like, I thought we were safe. I think a majority of Watford fans were coming out of that Newcastle game thinking we were safe and it was done. But just Bournemouth in that second half seemed to pull it out the bag, and Villa got a bit lucky. Perhaps they were due a bit of luck with VAR. But, you know, I just somehow I feel a bit less confident than I did even before the Norwich game.
That's the thing, because after the Newcastle game, the general kind of consensus I thought on Twitter was, you know what, we're staying up now. There's no way we're going to go down. And then the results going against us over the weekend, I looked back onto Twitter, and Watford Twitter was basically confirming our relegation. So it's amazing how it could kind of change so quickly.
I'm solely focusing on West Ham, but I'm too nervous to think about whether I'm confident or not, if that makes sense. Like, if we turn up, then, you know, we'll win. Simple as that. I genuinely think our team is better than theirs. However, you know, I just wonder whether the nerves of that day will get to us. And even if we don't beat West Ham, even if we draw, I think that's it. We'll be ever closer to the drop, because it just feels like while Nathan Ake is probably going to be out for the season, Bournemouth just have that something about them from the second half of the Spurs game and the second half of the Leicester game, and you saw at full time the players were all smiling, and that confidence boost for them makes me really worried.
Yeah, big period. The relegation battle is really hotting up at the moment. Before we look ahead to the run-in, and obviously these 3 massive fixtures for Watford, particularly that one on Friday against West Ham, which is almost being built up as a cup final really, because obviously we do have to play Manchester City and Arsenal, which are 2 tough games, particularly that City one. Potentially we could get a point at Arsenal, but we'll discuss that a little bit later on in the podcast. Sam, we'll take it back to that Newcastle win. A massive win for Watford, as we said, with the results going against us. To keep that gap between the bottom 3 and us was so important. But we'll just look at that performance as a whole. Of course, we did go 1-0 down to that really sloppy Dwight Gale goal from a corner. The defending was just really poor from Watford, which has been a theme throughout this season. But set pieces, it was just avoidable. The reaction was really good. I think it was a tale of 2 halves. Sorry for the cliche, but it really was. In the second half, of course, Troy Deeney, who has received a bit of stick on this podcast before, but from a number of Watford fans, stepping up with 2 big penalties. And as I said, actually tweeted out, the time to take and score those 2 penalties showed massive cojones. And he's a man who, you know what, as we said, has come under fire for his performances recently. We know he's had trouble with his knee, but to step up in that situation and put them away was a massive moment. How do you look on that whole performance, Sam?
As you said, it was a tale of 2 halves. I thought we started really slowly, really poorly. Particularly that first 5 minutes, we were giving away a lot of free kicks. I mean, had a couple of corners, and we just didn't really seem to be getting into the groove of the game. And I think going 1-0 down, I don't want to say it was a good thing, but similar to the Norwich game, it just appeared we completely woke up and sparked into life. We got a bit unlucky in the first half with that Danny Welbeck shot off the line. I thought it was in. I was screaming at the ref. Another Villa situation where the watch wasn't working or something. But, you know, the second half, I can't fault the performance, with the exception of a couple of finishes by Mr. Troy Deeney, who should have scored at least another 2. You know, some could say it's lucky that we got 2 penalties to get away with it, but I believe we're due a bit of luck with that anyway.
Well, both penalties came from that right-hand side, really, and the big improvement for me in the second half was the link-up between Kiko and Sarr, because in the first half they weren't really working that well. I think Danny Rose had kind of, not sussed Sarr out, but he basically was just getting really tight to Sarr, which didn't allow him to get in behind. And in the second half, I think Kiko was just offering a bit more support, and those 2 guys linked up really well. And there was a stat that came out from over the weekend. I think it was those guys between Sarr and Kiko had 4 pass combinations, so they passed to each other 4 times. In the second half, it was 12. So that really does just show how effective they were during the second half. And of course, the first awarding of the penalty came from that overlap from Kiko, which was a real positive, as I said. And the second goal, obviously, was Kiko throwing it into Shmila Sarr. How important is that relationship between Sarr and Kiko, Sam? Because I think we're actually seeing how dangerous we can be down that right-hand side.
Well, Messina and Holebas, whoever's been playing, haven't necessarily had the best season. I thought Rose was all over the place against us. Kiko is another one of those players like Troy Deeney who received a lot of stick on this podcast and from Watford fans, but my word, in the second half, he stepped up. He was brilliant. And I do think Sarr's performance largely depends on the way Kiko plays, because if Kiko's at it and is getting the ball out of his feet quickly, then it just gives Sarr that extra bit of edge to run in behind, if you know what I mean. And the way Kiko improved, I think, was massive. Also, I kind of noticed in the second half, Sarr was drifting more towards the middle as well as staying on that right-hand side. And I think it's so important that, you know, we give him the licence to move about. Considering we don't have too many players that are that mobile in the middle, we should give Sarr that licence to move around, particularly as well as Adam Leventhal wrote in his Athletic article, apparently next season we're looking to build the team around Ismaila Sarr, and if we are doing so, then we need to be giving him that licence to move.
Yeah, we've seen a massive improvement from Sarr when Kiko's more involved down that right-hand side, and another player at the back who I thought played really well, actually. And, you know, Watford's defence, as we've said many times, not only on this podcast, but in the channel and over the season, has come under a real criticism, and rightly so, because it hasn't been at the levels we expect as a fan base. But one player, and I think probably our best centre-back at the moment, is Craig Dawson. I thought he was very good against Newcastle United. Won effectively everything in the air, looked good on the ball, read the game well. And I think Craig Dawson, as again, another player, I think it's a theme here. They've come under criticism. It hasn't been a great season overall for individuals, but Craig Dawson, since the restart, has stepped up, and I think he's looked very assured at the back. And a threat at set pieces as well, and that was another theme on Saturday. I read, another stat I read was, you know, here's a stat, but it was
Here's a stat.
He only lost one header against Newcastle.
Yeah, I thought Dawson, again, he's becoming Mr. Reliable at the back, and it's something that we've lacked at Watford for so long. It's just a shame that he's kind of coming towards the end of his career. He's a threat at both ends of the pitch, and he looks calm and assured, sometimes even a bit too calm and assured, if that makes sense. But, you know, it's really impressive. And another man I just want to have a mention, because, you know, if I'm going to criticise a player, I have to praise him when he does well. I thought Kabasele was much improved against Newcastle, with the exception of the goal, which was soft defending and really, really poor. I thought he marshalled the Newcastle forwards really, really well, and if he carries on like that, then there's no reason why he can't hold down a starting place in the team.
Do you think that's our best centre-back pairing now, Sam, with Kabasele and Dawson?
It's very, very hard to say, because I've spoken about this before, but Kabasele is very much like 3 good games, 1 awful game where he'll get sent off and concede a penalty. Very Gabriel Tamas-esque, basically. Look, I'm not going to be one to say Cathcart's like done or he's not good enough, because I'm a massive Cathcart fan, brilliant servant of the club. In the long term, he's probably not going to be the answer, and Kabasele has bags of potential, we know that, but it's just about seeing that consistency from him, and if he can remain consistent and at the performance levels that he was on Saturday, then that definitely is our best defensive backline. And
then we're on the line of individual performances. Another guy I wanted to praise. It feels like, I know, it's good to praise when there's positive performances, because we haven't been blessed with a lot this season, but I'm going to
make the most of it.
Yeah, we'll make the most of it now, but I think he's got to get player of the season. That's Will Hughes.
Will Hughes, unbelievable. He's so good.
I mean, I think Will was really honest in his post-match interview that he didn't actually... He's so selfless in the sense that in the post-match interview, he didn't recognise how good he was. He was just like, I'm doing a job for the team. But he was like, I realised I've got to be running more. I need to be putting in a shift. And that's the attitude we need if we want to stay up in this division. And it reflected against Newcastle United. The way he was covering so much ground. As you mentioned, that DEENEY chance that he missed. He was the man. He was the first line of the press. And that's our defensive midfielder. He's got so much energy. And actually, I think he's perceptibly his stamina is very high because his work rate does not stop for 90 minutes. Not only that, but the way he reads the game, his tackling, his passing, his interceptions. He's just becoming a real complete midfielder. Now, the probably one aspect of his game that he will struggle to improve on is his pace, but defensive midfield position allows him to basically sit and then sprint at certain times. It allows him to select his sprints, whereas I think when he was on the right-hand side, there was he had to do it consistently, and he's not that sort of player. And it actually shows how much Javi did waste him on the right-hand side because he's so good in that defensive midfield role.
Can I just say, future Watford captain material. You know, you mentioned already here how he just seems so selfless and committed in his interviews and that's reflected in his performances on the pitch. Just the way he goes about things. He's not selfish. He doesn't go for goal as much as perhaps he should. He works his absolute socks off for the team, and you know, to have a player like Will Hughes on our hands is just a special talent. Like he always had at Derby when he was close to a Liverpool link, and he had a lot of injuries, but he seems to be fulfilling his potential now. In terms of the player of the season, it's very hard to say considering we're not safe yet. Look, I would think it will be him. I think Foster potentially threw it away with that. I don't want to say players throw it away on single games, but that Southampton performance might cost us in the end, and I think that will throw it away. I would have said before the lockdown Etienne Capoue, but his performances haven't reached the standards that we know he can reach.
I think it's fair to say, though, Hughes has probably been the best player since Pearce has come in.
Yeah, 100%. That Man United game at home, Pearson's first game, even in the bad games, he was always that standout, and yeah, he's just been brilliant.
Sam, you mentioned Ben Foster, and again, he did make some big saves. And I know he had that slip up with the Southampton game, but there was I think the turning point in the game when we look back on Saturday's win was when Alan Saint-Maximin went through and he went for the outside of the boot finish, which actually wasn't a poor strike, but the way Ben Foster just came out and spread himself, he's done that so many times this season, so a big shout out to Ben Foster once again, stepping up when counted upon. Now, the interesting news that came out of The Athletic and from Adam Leventhal this week was regarding the future of Watford and how we're going to build the team for next season, because I think it's fair, as Watford fans, there needs to be a complete restructure in the way we operate in terms of recruitment, players that need to leave and players that need to be brought in. Now, Adam Leventhal reported, and his sources understand, that if Watford were to stay in the Premier League, the club's aim is to build the team around Ismaila Sarr rather than sell the winger in the upcoming transfer window.
I do think we need we mentioned the whole restructure. I think we need a whole change in philosophy, a bit like how Brighton have done. I've got a feeling, I know he's never going to be dropped this season, but I do feel like we're now recognising that we need an alternative to Troy Deeney. And I think what they're talking about with having Sarr as the main man in the team is perhaps, you know, play more to his strengths, balls on the ground, quick build-up play. Very similar to Brighton. I don't want to make comparisons, but a bit like, you know, that prime Arsenal side who'd play quickly on the floor and get it in behind. And a new right-back would be so important for this as well, because while I said Kiko has been good, and there's kind of split opinion about him. Some Watford fans love him, some...
I do really like Kiko, I have to admit. I think... Don't get me wrong, he's inconsistent, but when he's good, he's very, very good. And I think actually, Kiko's played poor games when Sarr isn't playing. I think actually the second half against Newcastle showed that when those guys are linking up and Kiko has a licence to go forward and play with Sarr and play to his strengths, that those two guys have a real relationship, I think, that could really blossom. I think it'd be a waste to not try that next season. And then I know we've been linked with Jeremy Ngakia from West Ham, so there's definitely a right back as an area we need to look at. No, there's no doubt about it. But I wouldn't get rid of Kiko.
I mean, you mentioned the word inconsistent. I personally, for me, I haven't seen enough of him to suggest that he's going to be good enough going forward. Neither's Daryl Janmaat. But, you know, again, there's no harm in trying it. If they can keep up the level of performances that they've been showing recently, then I don't see why we can't keep it on that right-hand side. I was personally, because I think if we go down, I think the one man we'll be building the team around will be Will Hughes, if we can keep hold of him. You know, I also feel like there'll be a lot of exits in the summer. I will touch on it in a future podcast, but it's going to be so important to keep Ismaila Sarr.
And we'll look ahead now, actually, to the last three games. And as we mentioned, it's been an an interesting weekend. So I'm really glad we actually got to record this podcast after all the results had happened, because I think our mood would have been a lot different from straight after the win against Newcastle to now after the results that have happened and have occurred over the weekend. We'll look at the last 3 games now, Sam, and we'll touch on the nearest fixture, which is Friday night away at West Ham. Wow, we said Norwich was big. We say that Newcastle was big. West Ham has got to be the biggest game the club has seen in how long? I mean, it's probably 5 or 6 years. Like, it's such a big game. I'm really nervous already, and it's kind of, I'm getting the feeling at the moment it is like a playoff final, because, okay, it doesn't mean if we lose against West Ham, mathematically we're not down, okay, but Manchester City, the likelihood that we're going to win that is very low. Now, Arsenal, there is a suggestion that we could maybe pick up a point, but the West Ham game is one we've got to be targeting. Troy said it repeatedly in his post-match interview that we can't just look at the Newcastle game. We've got to look ahead to West Ham. It's make or break for Watford. We said that for the last 3 games. But if we can come away from the last 3 with 9 points, not the Man City Arsenal game, the last 3 with Norwich, Newcastle, West Ham with 9 points, surely if we win against West Ham, we're safe.
Yeah, it's just so hard to call. We would be leaving West Ham out of our sight, but again, if Bournemouth win, then we're looking over our shoulders again, and it's going to be so nervy watching all the other teams around us. Luckily, Bournemouth have Man City away next, so hopefully their goal difference will be damaged as well. Look, we're recording this on Monday afternoon, and I haven't thought about anything else today except for that West Ham game. It's Brighton away level-esque, and I don't want to say it's the biggest game in the club's history, because obviously we've played them 2 FA Cup finals, but in terms of importance and what it means for the football club as a whole, this is up there.
If we win, I genuinely believe if we win, we're pretty much safe. Like, we are on the verge of safety, but if we lose, then we're like, oh my goodness, we're going to go down. So it's so... Oh, I'm nervous already, Sam. Oh, my God.
I mean, in terms of... you say it's make or break. This is make or break for the Pozzo family as well. Because, not in terms of them leaving, but if you look at what they've wanted to build up, Scott Duxbury said, we want to be the best of the rest. We want to eventually break into Europe. We want to be an established Premier League team. We want a new stadium. We want to sign world-class players eventually. I mean, along those lines... If we go down, all of that goes out the window, and we're going to have to start again completely. New team, new squad, new promotion push, and then solidifying our place in the Premier League again. This is going to be so important for the football club as a whole to beat West Ham and stay up. And, I mean, for me, it's just... In my lifetime, this is the most important game.
How many points do you think we'll get from the last 3? I know we'll probably assess it after West Ham, but... Just looking ahead to those last 3, we put a tweet out on WD18 fans. If you're not following us already on Twitter and Instagram, make sure you do go and drop us a follow. But we put a tweet out saying Watford's final 3 fixtures, as you already know. How many points will we pick up? We got 89 replies. Thank you very much to everyone who's interacting with our content at the moment. But I thought the general mood was 1.
Yeah, I mean, look, at a push, we're saying, I think us 2 said before the podcast, at a push, we'll say 4. A win against West Ham and a point against Arsenal at a push. Personally, the West Ham game could go either way, so we'll call it at 1, and I can't see us getting points from the last 2, so I think 1 point we'll get from the last 3. Wouldn't surprise me if it's 0.
You really?
Yeah, really wouldn't.
Oh, I don't know. The thing is though, confidence must be high in terms of back-to-back wins. As I said, the first time since January, 2 big wins, to come from behind twice and to come back and get a win at such a crucial stage of the season. Surely going into West Ham, we've got to be full of confidence. Surely we've got to be playing on the front foot. Now, that's whether we will or not is a different story, but surely at any point of the season, to get back-to-back wins and going into such a big game, it would be now, no?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, just a bit off the topic, but I was just looking at our fixtures, and I don't want to be a bit like, I don't want to be negative, but we could be sat here in just under 2 weeks recording the podcast as a championship side. So if that doesn't scare the players...
Thanks for lifting the mood, Sam. Thanks for that, buddy.
It's only 2 weeks away.
Goodness.
Deactivate everything on social media and that's it. But, yeah, I mean, the incentive is there, survival in the Premier League, and we have seen in the last 2 games that they've stepped up when we've needed them to. everyone against West Ham is going to have to be on it because they're playing well at the moment. They just beat Norwich 4-0 away from home. Norwich aren't great, but it was a good performance from West Ham.
Well, Antonio's the man you've got to be looking out for, and I'm not just saying they're a one-man team, but the proposition of Antonio coming up against our defence is worrying me, and it's Monday afternoon. I mean, that is a scary proposition because, yeah, granted, it's 4 goals against Norwich who have already relegated, and he's a player who runs in behind, he drops short, he's physical, he's quick, he's actually clinical as well. That is scary coming up against our back line. I don't get how good we've been playing recently, and how good the likes of Craig Dawson have performed recently. That is a scary sight, and if we don't step up and we don't play to our full capabilities, then it could be messy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've credited Will Hughes, but he is going to be so important for that game, along with Abdoulaye Doucouré and Etienne Capoue. Because if you look at the way West Ham play, a lot of whether they play well or not is dictated by Declan Rice. I mean, a lot of people on social media and don't rate him at all. I'm a big fan. I think he's brilliant, Declan Rice. If we can close him, stop him getting his passes off and not allowing him the space that he needs to operate, then I do think we've got a brilliant chance. It's a bit early for team news as well, but I just wonder whether Troy Deeney will start, considering apparently he's not going to be training for 3 or 4 days this week because of his knee injury.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Sam, because in his post-match interview, if I can remember correctly from the weekend, he was saying he's going to have to get it drained, his knee drained, and then have a couple of injections. So it doesn't look good. And to be honest, fair play to Troy, because he even admitted afterwards, if he doesn't have to play, in terms of his knee is quite in a bad state at the moment. So he's had it since the start of the season. I still cast my mind back to that Everton game. I think it was the first 3 games of the season, and he decided to play, and they decided against having an operation in pre-season, which would have ruled him out, and then he had to have it after the first couple of games. So that was a weird decision. But my point is, he's had this issue for a number of years now. So it'll be interesting to see, as you said, Sam, whether Nigel will risk him going into West Ham, because whatever you think of Deeney and what he brings to the team, it is important to have a player like him in and around the squad for such a big game, to have that voice in the dressing room, whether he's actually on the pitch or not.
I'm just being more interested if he is out, assuming that he will be on the bench, which I think he will be, because I mean we can't have someone who's only 90% fit starting, and as we said already, how crucial this is. It's just going to be interesting to see whether he goes with Welbeck up front and, I don't know, Pereira most likely on the left, or whether he goes with Andre Gray up front, considering Danny Welbeck has been doing well on the left. What I don't want to see is us change to 4-4-2 again, because it didn't work at Burnley, and it's not going to work it won't work if we just go with this formation away at West Ham.
Would there be any changes? Let's just assume that Troy's going to be fully fit for Friday. Would you still start him up front? Would you still play him? Or would you go for Danny Welbeck up top? Because this is the debate, isn't it? I mean, the amount of fans who are like, let's just put Danny Welbeck up top, drop Troy. But it's very unlikely I can see that happening. And I mean, if everyone's fit, I'd probably keep it unchanged from Newcastle.
Yeah, it's very, very harsh if you drop anyone. I mean, perhaps the only change that I could think of would be bringing in Cathcart for Kabasele, considering he likes to rotate them. But I can't see it happening. Also, another thing, like, so many people on social media seem to be saying it, let's just accept we're not going to see João Pedro, and it's not the time to introduce João Pedro, because we don't want to take risks in what is the most important period in the club's history, recent history. I don't know. I personally, I wouldn't throw Pedro in there yet.
I think it's similar to the Peñaranda situation when he first came in. It's like, we just want to see him. We haven't actually had an opportunity to really see what João Pedro's about. Okay, there was glimpses in the Brentford friendly. There was glimpses against... It was Southampton he came on, didn't he? And he looked okay down the left.
Yeah,
he was probably the bright spark. But is it the time to really give him a go? Let us know, actually. You can message us or at WD18 fans on Twitter and Instagram, as I mentioned previously. We're always interested to hear your thoughts, and we'll try and give some post-match reaction to the West Ham game on Friday. But yeah, a massive game going into Friday night. Quickly, Sam, your score prediction. We don't normally do these, but I think due to the magnitude of the game, it's worth getting your thoughts on that.
My head says
it's like a midlife crisis.
Yeah, it's like my whole life hinges on it. I was joking with a mate actually, because I'm going to be sitting my A levels next year. can you imagine if I've got an A-level exam and that evening we've got a playoff semi-final? Like, that's my A-levels out the window, so this is so important. My head says a draw. 2-2. Both defences aren't great. My heart says 2-1 Watford.
I'm going to go bold. I'm going to go 3-1 Watford. Let's do it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know what? We have a good record at the London Stadium. We 3 times 1-2. Last season we were brilliant. I know they missed an absolute sitter. I think it was Antonio actually, and Foster made a wonder save. But we were very good. And who can forget that 4-2 game? Oh, brilliant.
Oh, and also last year that link up between Pereira and Delafeu was absolutely
so
orgasmic. Good. I think it's the only superlative I could use to describe that.
Do you know what though? Like, looking back on that 4-2, if I could bring back Valon Barami, what a man! What a
underrated,
man.
I think.
Yeah,
because obviously he played for both clubs, didn't he? But that 4-2, I remember even that season. Well, I think the season before we saw the best of Valon Barami, but he was so good at just like protecting the back four, and I don't think we actually maybe appreciated at the time how good he was at just breaking up playing. To be honest, it's similar to the role Will Hughes is playing at the moment. I know.
I was going to say I see so many similarities between Hughesy and Valon Barami. Just the way that they snap into tackles and they protect the defence, and you know I do feel like I don't want to say replaced Barami, because like while he was very good, I wouldn't say he was like a crucial member of the side, but it just appears that. Yeah, he was influential, and we've missed that, having that bite in midfield.
We do miss that sometimes, and I think since Hughes has played in that role, it's very reminiscent of Barami. I think that's a very good shout, Sam. Looking ahead now to Friday, thank you very much for listening to the WD18 podcast. We'll be back for another one after the West Ham game. Hopefully reflecting on a Watford win, a big win hopefully as well. If you haven't subscribed to us on iTunes and Spotify, make sure you do. And you can actually leave a review on iTunes, that would be much appreciated. Subscribe to us on WD18 if you're listening on YouTube. Make sure to leave a like, turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload, and we'll see you next time.